Welcome to Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at Benny Keith is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Heaping Spoonful. Our goal with this podcast is to share the stories of the Mid-South's top chefs and restaurateurs with our listeners. I'm Kelly Bass, and I am proud to be your host on Heaping Spoonful. I started covering the Arkansas restaurant scene, God, I'm old, more than 40 years ago, and most of that was doing restaurant reviews and features about restaurants for Little Rock, Arkansas-based newspapers and magazines. Long before the internet was a thing, back before anybody who got on Yelp or TripAdvisor could be a restaurant reviewer themselves. We had kind of a unique platform, and it was fun. But I can tell you, thanks to the folks at Benny Keith Foods, I'm a podcaster now, and I like talking about food and talking to chefs and restaurateurs a lot more than I like writing about all that. So speaking of Benny Keith, I'm happy today to welcome Shane Henderson, Benny Keith's executive chef, as our guest on Heaping Spoonful. I can safely say none of our guests ever has or ever will have a shorter trip to our studio than the man sitting across from me right now, because all he had to do was come up a flight of stairs. So welcome, Shane.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we're glad to share your story with our listeners. I'd guess that when most folks think about a food service company and what they do, they think of, two obvious and very important things. A lot of food comes to your warehouse, it hangs out for a while, gets loaded on trucks, and gets driven, in Benny Keith's Mid-South case, all over the Mid-South. And that's what you do to make sure that everybody's got the great food that they cook up and serve in their restaurants or other food service locations. But employing an executive chef might not be what you think of when you think of a company like Benny Keith. But you marked your 13th anniversary at Benny Keith Mid-South this fall. When you got hired here, was that a novelty or to have a chef in 2010, or was that something other companies like that were doing?
You know what? There were definitely a couple of other ones out there. I know a good friend of mine, Ed Horniak, back then, he was working for PFG, and he's actually came in the back of one of my kitchens when I was in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and said, What are you doing? When are you going to get to Little Rock? Because back then, especially, if you were a chef in Arkansas, you wanted to be in Little Rock. Now, I mean, a lot has changed. I mean, that was 20-plus years ago.
Right.
There's a lot of great places all over the state now. But back then, I wanted to be in Little Rock.
Sure.
And so as soon as he said that, I think I called him 2 days later and said, Ed, how do I get there? Now, I do still have a lot of people that when they see Benny Keith, executive chef, they think that I'm downstairs putting things in boxes that we sell, and they don't get no, yeah. we don't make anything here. We're a logistics company primarily.
Exactly.
but
you again, you people have to prepare the things that you sell them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, and maybe you said Ed was already doing this for a food service company, and I'm guessing it's become a more popular thing along the way. But we'll talk in a little bit about what it is that you do to serve your company and your clients. But you'd been a executive chef, and you said you were in Jonesboro, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then when you came here, I guess you came here to go to work at Simply the Best.
Well, I actually came here to work, as you and I were talking about earlier. Kobe Smith opened up Adalots.
Oh, yeah.
I actually came here and was an executive chef at Adalots for a very small amount of time before I met Rob Best. I met Rob in August when we were coming back from a trip. We were in Dallas in the airport on a layover, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, do you have any spare time? Katrina just hit New Orleans. I'm going to be swamped. Do you have any time at all you can help me?" I went over and helped him one day, went in the next day, and went to work full-time for Rob Best then.
So he was involved in helping with Katrina?
Yep. Yeah, that was how me and Rob Best got started.
Just because here we are in Little Rock, Arkansas, but I guess they needed people from all over to feed all the folks who were without homes, and also all the people who were down there at work.
Yeah, and we fed the Entergy. This was where they've shipped people here for call support.
Yeah.
And so we fed 100 and something people every day for, months.
Right, because Entergy is headquartered in New Orleans, and they had to bail out because they were destroyed. And they came here. Wow, you just never think about all the... I remember, of course, what was going on during COVID, and we had the World Kitchen cooking here for all kinds of stuff. So there's everywhere, everywhere people are, and disastrous just brings it out. Is there's got to be a way to get them fed.
Yeah, that's
sure.
And food brings people comfort, makes them feel better. And
sure.
So if we could be any part of that, I mean, that's why I got into this. It's not just
Yeah, well,
because I could do it.
It makes people happy. I know. I've we've done a lot of these Heaping Spoonful episodes, and a lot of times people like, "What do you like best about your job?" Is like watching people smile after they eat what I cooked.
Yeah,
it's just like instant gratification of, oh man, this is good.
This is good.
And we were just talking about getting to eat a bunch of your great food a couple of weeks ago, and just everybody raving about it. And again, it's like, hey, that's why I do it.
Yeah, that's
for sure. Well, again, Adelot's interesting place, and those who are listening here in Arkansas, particularly Central Arkansas, will remember that was a Judy Waller operation who was renowned for building the U.S. Pizza mini chain of pizza restaurants here. And it was up on a cool hill. It was a beautiful building in North Little Rock, but there were some challenges to it, including liquor laws and other sordid stuff that went on. And again, you and and Kobe have both have ties back to that. So you went to work for Rob, and then and when we were talking about him again, he's just renowned. I mean, he had a restaurant at the Arkansas Art Center, now the Museum of Fine Arts. But I mean, the catering operation was just massive, and it's like a few others. I've told folks I know who work at Capers or work at Trios, and it goes for Simply the Best. When you pulled up and you were going to an event and you saw their van outside, you're like, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you learned a lot and still have a good relationship with Rob.
Oh yes, I mean, Rob is practically a father to me. I may not have worked for him for 20 years or anything, but man, the time we put together and since then we still talk and have dinner and text and I love Rob best. I like we were just saying, I mean, the reach that Rob had in our community and in our state and probably much further than I even know is just amazing. Everybody talks about the Jacques and Suzanne's and the tree that came from there. And I'm like, man, but the Rob Best tree, I mean,
sure.
Titus Hawley at the pantry worked there. Kobe Smith, who you had in a couple it just amazes me. Jason Morrell, the sous chef at the Clinton Library. It just. Yeah,
exactly. And then, he was also connected with, and lots of great chefs, including Jamie McAfee and bunches, were involved in Pulaski Tech Culinary School.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And again, which is also been the training ground for lots of folks, from folks at the executive chef level to folks at the, just every level of restaurant operations. Is really cool. So you had you were at Argenta Market when the opportunity came to join Benny Keith. How did that happen? I mean, were they just looking, or how did it come for you to come to Benny Keith?
So I had met Rusty Mathis, our general manager, 20-something years ago for just a second. And he was leaving here to go out to run our New Mexico division.
Right.
And the whole time we might bump into each other, and I would say, one of these days you're going to hire me as your executive chef. One of these days you're going to hire me as your executive chef. And so when he came back, we just kind of started talking about it and thinking about it, and there wasn't an executive chef here, and he was like, we're never going to have an executive chef. We don't need that. And over time, we just kept talking about it and thought, oh no, there is a role. So actually, I came in and bought produce for the first year and a half I was here, while we kind of were figuring out what would an executive chef role here be.
Right.
And on day one that I was named the executive chef, I called him and said, hey, okay, now I'm the chef. What do I do today? And he's like, hey, you asked for it. You go build it the way you see it should be. And I got really lucky that I got to build this the way that if I was a customer, I'd want it to look.
Well, here we are 13 years later, and you don't have to walk us through the exact progression. But so what are the general duties? What are, because I look at what you do. And I look a little bit on a much smaller scale at this podcast as kind of a value add to the customers of Benny Keith. What are the things that you do?
And as you know, we do a lot of community outreach. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. We have customers come in. We have potential customers come in. I get out and ride with sales reps if they're having an issue or just need a little help or need somebody to get in front of a customer. So, this is just like working for Rob was. Every day is different here. We may be looking at, like you and I were talking about earlier, looking at a new meat. Do we need to bring in this brand of beef? And okay, let's taste it. Okay, what's the upside of this? What's the features, the advantages, the benefits? Does this fit for us? Does this move some cases? So, that's the thing I really like about this job is every day we're doing something a little bit different.
Well, let's say I'm a new restaurant and I'm just trying to get off the ground and I'm like, hey, can you help me build my menu? Well, what do you want to be? Well, I kind of want to be like bar food, but higher end and, what's your clientele? So could you take it from that level?
Yep, absolutely. And I tell people a lot of the time, the more open-minded you are when you come in, the better this is that I can kind of think about what it is. If you say, I want to have a ham sandwich, well, okay, I can make you a ham sandwich, but you pretty much already know what that's going to be like.
Right.
If you say, man, we want to have some really great upscale sandwiches, okay, that lets me play around and come up with what all could be out there. We take it from a startup that really doesn't have an idea. We've had people come in that say, we want to get into a restaurant, where we started by literally being like, okay, here's how you turn on a fryer.
Yeah.
To, chefs that have been around forever that are like, I need some help with, what's on trend or what else can we do with the trimmings from the beef tenderloin.
Sure.
And everywhere in between. Now, if it's somebody that's wanting to start a restaurant, we may come in and talk about what do you want to, okay, we want to be an upscale bar. Okay, well, here's a few ideas, and we may start off with 15 or 20 ideas and then kind of try to narrow that down to out of these 15 or 20 ideas, what do we want to focus on? And as a startup, we may be in the kitchen a couple of times or emailing and talking back and forth while we develop what it is. And I want to be as involved or as uninvolved as the customer wants me to be.
I can see them going like, hey, I know I want onion rings.
Yep.
What should I do? Is there one that, that I can just get out of a box that's good enough, or do I just need to cut up onions and batter them and fry them? And, you say, well, look, here's what you need to do.
Yeah. And a lot of times I want to start, like if it is an onion ring, okay, well, let's start at the top end of it. We can always kind of work our way down to something, what it is that you want.
Right.
But let's go over the top and then figure it out, because I don't want you to come in here and be like, well, I wonder why I didn't show us how to bread our own onion rings. And so,
yeah, well, that's the thing too. I think, and I've been surprised as I've eaten and talked with restaurateurs. Sometimes, you can get. Well, for instance, I went to a banquet or a luncheon last week, and I knew the hotel where it was. I knew they didn't have a pastry chef. But the raspberry swirl cheesecake I had was pretty good.
Yep.
And it obviously came out of a box, hopefully a box they got from Benny Keith.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
But so, you have to, as a restaurateur, I guess, say, what do I want to? And then I also was at a place and I had a bowl of Irish stew and it had a little brown bread with it. And I said, so what brand is this bread? It's really good. They go, oh, we make it.
Yep.
And we make all our own salad dressings. I was like, wow. So I guess they have to make the determination of what they want to put into it. And is it worth it?
Is it worth
the time? Is it worth maybe a little extra money to make that bread versus buy that bread?
And that is a lot of what we do, is have them come in and like salad dressings. Okay, well, we can make quite a bit at a time. That's a good use of time, but I don't have the skill level to cut the onions exactly the same way every time. Okay, well then let's look at something else.
There's a product
for that, so that we've got
And I know again, same with beef. And I think Creekstone was the one that was mentioned recently, and that's a beef that I guess I don't know how recently it came into the market. It's been in the market a while, but that's one that I'm sure some people like. I talked to Chris Tanner. He's like, at one point in his progression of being a restaurateur, he's like, we're going with Creekstone, and they advertise that. And that's something you can help them figure out.
Yeah. And a lot of times when they come into the kitchen, that is exactly what we talk about. A lot of people say, well, why don't you have the recipes written when somebody comes in for you? Because the more we talk, the more I may switch and think, man, I was going to go down this road, but I mean, not too long ago, we were looking at a pasta, and after I started making it, they were talking about, but we really want something that's kind of spicy. Well, then I'd totally switch what I was doing. Well, if I would have written the recipe, I would have just cooked them the recipe. But from us talking, I realized, what I'm doing and what you want aren't the same. So let me switch gears just a little bit and do what you're asking me.
I've also learned, like I did a podcast with a couple who owned a restaurant in Bryant, and they've since opened one in Little Rock, and it's got a Cajun flair to it. And I was like, do you just love Cajun food? And I was like, no, but the guy we hired as a chef is really good at doing Cajun food. Yeah. So he can come to you and say, what all do you think? Should I do jambalaya? Should I do gumbo? Should I do red beans? And you help them, I guess, source, because they actually were touting the brand of bean they were using in their red beans. I mean, so I guess it just, you can help them at whatever level they want to be helped, for sure. So when you start talking, I mean, do you ever look at, work with them and look at a menu and go, why do you have no fish?
Yeah. And there's a place that's just opening up right now that we had that exact same conversation. And of course, the menu was probably 25 or 30 items, and they didn't have fish. Well, and I get it. When you're writing a menu, a lot of times it's hard to see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Because you get involved in it, and you need somebody else just to come in and say, hey, what about salmon?
Yeah.
Salmon's the best-selling fish in Arkansas.
For sure.
Except for catfish.
Well, that's
yeah. And so maybe you want to get some salmon on here, and I noticed you've got 5 steaks on here. Okay, well, maybe we should cut a couple of those off. And especially, I've been here for, almost 14 years. I've seen a lot of things work, and I've seen a lot of things, so I can kind of rely on that.
Sure.
What I've seen work and what I haven't. Not to say that I'm right, but at least I have that time that I've seen what is working in our market and what's not.
Well, anytime you're in a business and you can work with somebody who has had the chance to work with dozens, if not hundreds of people in that business, and they've learned what works, and you can come and say, hey, salmon works really well.
Yeah.
There's, again, a restaurateur I mentioned earlier who has a chopped salmon salad on the menu at 2 of his 3 restaurants. It's the number one selling thing at both of those restaurants.
Yeah, right.
Why would you not have it? I mean, or something like it. Yeah, that's for sure. Have you ever had any tough conversations with those kinds of folks and said, look, if you really want to be successful, you're going to need to think about making some changes?
Yeah, I mean, that's... And sometimes some customers just don't want to hear it. We've had some tough conversations, and the hardest part is I want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
The only way that I get to keep doing this is if you're successful. If your restaurant closes, that's a little bit of part of my business just closed. So
sure.
I'm never going to say to somebody, that I give you advice that would do damage to your business, and I want to see you as successful for as long as possible.
Right. So I know a lot of your work, you said you ride with sales reps and people to go out and visit, and I know a lot, and I've been lucky enough to be here. I just walked in a couple of weeks ago when John Currents and the folks from Big Bad Breakfast were here, which they just opened. We're recording this right before Thanksgiving in 2023, and they just recently opened downtown, and we're tasting on some stuff, and I got to jump in and have a few bites too. So I know a lot of your work happens here, but in your years at Benny Keefe Mid-South, the footprint of the company has expanded greatly, because I remember when I first, I've known Rusty for a long, long time, and it was really Arkansas and maybe touching the edges of the bordering states, with Sonics particularly and things, and then Memphis, and then now, into Mississippi and into Alabama. Mm-hmm. Do you ever get on the road any and go out and see folks?
Yeah. Part of our growth has also meant that we're a lot busier in the kitchen here.
Sure.
But I do get out as much as I can. We also have a kitchen over in Memphis, so I am over there a fair amount in that kitchen as well. But like earlier this week, I was in Northwest Arkansas.
Right.
So
where y'all have and again, you have I'm obviously biased personally. I just love seeing Benny Keith trucks around the places, give them high fives. But, like Eureka Springs, y'all dominate in that market. And and there's some great restaurants. Anybody listening looking for a fun and a unique tourism experience, Eureka Springs, Arkansas needs to be on your list for the beauty and for the eating. And you'll see a lot of Benny Keith.
It's a great place to do something.
Yeah.
Or do nothing.
Yes, exactly. I like that. I like that. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break here on Heaping Spoonful. We'll be back in just a bit with Shane Henderson, the executive chef at Benny Keith Mid-South in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Kelly Bass.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Heaping Spoonful. Now we'll get back into our conversation with Shane Henderson. So you have an amazing kitchen here at Benny Keith, and like I said before, I've been lucky enough to be here. So is generally what you do in that kitchen, other than when you're really cooking for an event, and we'll talk a little bit more about your outreach here at Benny Keith, is it mostly, checking out new products for yourself and for customers and potential customers?
It's probably mostly demos where we either have a potential customer or a customer coming in and we're working on things for their menu specifically.
Right.
That's probably what we do the most of. Of course, this being the holiday time, this is our slowest time of the year to have people coming in and doing that.
But a lot of the time of the year.
Yeah.
What about, let's say that I'm a guy who represents some brand of chicken, and I say, I really want Benny Keith to carry this chicken. Do they show up with their chicken and say, check out my chicken?
Yeah, as long as, there's a lot of jumping hurdles that they have to get through. But once they get all that done, we spend a little bit of time doing that kind of stuff too.
Just checking out the different products.
And, a lot of farmers, we deal with them, obviously when season gets started, we'll deal with a lot of them. Do they have the supply chain? Can they supply us? Because, the last thing I want is getting you hooked on the squash from down the road, and then 2 weeks later be like, yeah, that was fun. We don't have that anymore. So
yeah, well, that's the thing, the volume. And, you all do have the Sonic business, and one of my best memories of Benny Keith was walking into the particular part of the warehouse where all the Sonic cups were, and just looking at this wall of cups and thinking, how do you make an efficient truckload when cups weigh nothing, but they take up a lot of space? How do you?
Yeah. Truckloads and truckloads of cups every day come and go out of here.
I know, and that's the thing. Again, I was talking earlier, people think of a company like Benny Keith, and they think, which is a huge part, tons of boxes of food come here and then they go out. But the logistics and figuring out the truck routes and all of the, all the connection points, and it's really an amazing logistical exercise just to do what you guys do. And I'm just kind of waxing on about my... Yep. But here we are we're at Benny Keith talking about Benny Keith. So.
And even when I was a customer, I would call and say, hey, I want this, special item. And they'd be like, okay, well, that takes this much time. And I'm like, why does it take, there's trucks rolling all over the place all the time. How can this not? Now that I've been here for quite some time, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand. It costs a lot to put one case of beets on a box and roll it from California. Okay, we got to make things make sense. Yeah,
exactly. And but I have heard that again, and through my knowledge and relationships with chefs and restaurateurs, and also through doing this podcast, that Benny Keith is known for being able to carry some more specialty things than some other ones do, and trying to make sure that what makes a particular restaurant special, like Leidenheimer bread or some other things that that people need, that you all make available to them.
But and one of the great things is we're still privately owned,
I know.
The descendants of Benny Keith still own the company, and
I know. Yeah,
we get to do things a little outside of the box, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to come work at.
Exactly. I'm, and I've worked at a public company, and then the guys who ran that company wished so much it could go back private because of all the hoops they didn't have to jump through as a private company. As long as the Hallam family is happy, everybody's happy.
That's right.
So we're in this beautiful building here right off of Interstate 440 and Highway 70 in North Little Rock. And you've been with Benny Keith longer than this beautiful building has been your company's home. So when it was time to build this building, I'm guessing that you had a role in determining how the kitchen would be outfitted.
Yeah, I got really lucky. I mean, they pretty much drew a box and said, go fill it. Rusty and I had a lot of discussions about what do we want out of this kitchen, and I mean, we also have some meeting rooms in there, and we knew we wanted to use that as part of our community outreach and have events and things going on in there. Well, part of that is we needed the place to do. I think the rule was we need to be able to do a 4-course meal with 4 chefs working independently of each other and stay out of each other's way.
Yeah.
And so if you'll notice in the kitchen, it is laid out where there's almost 4 lines where 4 people can work in there and without getting in too much in each other's way. And we love doing stuff like that.
Right, which is just probably not realistic for an operating restaurant, because the footprint, you couldn't afford that. But it's because so many times I talk to chefs, they're like, my kitchen's too small, we can't, and as your business grows, trying to crank that much more food out of a small kitchen. And y'all have got it down. And like you said, you've got a window out into the room the event room that's right there. And I've been to many great events about that. So,
and we also have a lot of chefs that come in and spend a little bit of time in there that say, oh, I want a bigger kitchen. And then they go into the bigger kitchen and they're like, you walk a lot.
Yeah. Oh, good point.
Yeah, to get anything, you got to walk all over the place.
Yeah, because but again, to be able to outfit it the way you wanted to, and to be able to, like you said.
Yeah, I was very lucky. Pretty much anything we wanted, as long as I could prove, like, no, this is a good expense. This is what we're going to do with it. This is why we need it. It's pretty well in there, with a couple of things that, in retrospect, of course, you'd change, which is with anything.
Of course.
But it's really a great kitchen.
Right. Well, we were just talking about, the fact that you have events and you all do a lot, again, on behalf of your customers, but also a lot of the philanthropic efforts naturally involve providing food, and not just raw, food, but providing prepared food. And I'm sure that takes on a lot of different forms. Like, I know sometimes people are like, we're doing a big thing. We need, 500 hot dogs. And they go, yeah, we can get you 500 hot dogs. And then they throw them on a grill and cook them. But then again, as we were just talking about, there's events where you guys are preparing and serving all the food yourself. And I know you've even helped a nonprofit kind of invent a fundraiser. I think was it Youth Home?
Mm-hmm. Youth Home, yeah. We did... before that, we did Farm Fresh Wishes for a few years for Make-A-Wish, and then that ended up becoming the Youth Homes event that raised a lot of money for a great cause. And that was one of those things that Benny Keith allowed me to go out and find somebody I wanted to work with and work with them and build it into something really cool and awesome. The next course was the name of it. Now it's called Exquisite Evening.
Yeah, and that's, again, and then you all are... And your resume says it. You all support the Museum of Discovery and the Spark event, and that's where I work. And we just had our event, just a couple of weeks ago, and it was fantastic. So I'd have to say that really, and I know it's been a purposeful, deliberate effort to be very active in supporting the nonprofit community and the community in general. But I think it's given Benny Keith a really high profile among people that you want to have a high profile with, who care about those kinds of things. So I'm sure while there's a ton of work involved, I'm sure it's a satisfying part of your job.
Yeah, and I love nothing more than even people that don't have a restaurant, don't own a restaurant, don't maybe even have a friend that is a server at a restaurant, but they know Benny Keith and they know that we're the food people.
Right.
And that's awesome. when I show up somewhere and somebody sees Benny Keith on me, they're like, "Oh yeah, now what do you guys do?" I just know that I show up sometimes. You guys have food, and that's part of our legacy around here. Is we want to be more than just delivering food to the restaurants. We want to be part of the community we're in.
Well,
and some of that means, going to those events and helping out with Youth Home or Thea Foundation or Music and Discovery, because we're part of this area too. We want to be part of it. If I can't make a change for the good, then what kind of good am I doing?
Well, it's greatly appreciated by everybody, the folks who come to the events and those of us who benefit from your philanthropy. So let's look back a bit. So you were talking about being in Jonesboro. Did you grow up in that part of the world?
I grew up in Calico Rock, Arkansas.
Calico Rock.
So I ended up in Jonesboro because I went to Arkansas State College.
How far? Calico Rock is in that general part of the world or not?
I mean, it's an hour and a half. Calico Rock's like, we're almost to Missouri, but we're not quite yet, but right in the middle.
Right. So you went to high school there and then went to college in Jonesboro?
Yep, went to college in Jonesboro, and of course, started working in kitchens while I was still in Calico Rock at the now defunct Leatherwood restaurant, and food was just something I always did. It was just easy to me. And,
but you got a degree in speech communication and a minor in criminology and law enforcement, but I guess were you still, while you were pursuing and getting your degree, were you working in restaurants?
Yeah, I was always working in restaurants, and it was just kind of one of those things like I thought, maybe I'm going to go be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that for a while.
Yeah. And I thought if you get a law degree, they just write you a big check. You just make all kinds of money. And then while I was working at the Jonesboro Country Club with Eugene McCann, that was our executive chef who works for Benny Keith now, he introduced me to some of our members at the country club, and they were like, no, it's a lot of work, and it's not a guarantee that you get paid well. And I was like, do what now?
Yeah, exactly.
And at the time, Eugene was trying to convince me to go to culinary school.
And you did?
Yeah. I walked in one day, and there was a couple of people in our kitchen, and Eugene said, hey, they're just going to kind of follow you around today. I'm like, all right, fine. I had no idea who they were. And at the end of the day, they said, hey, we'd like for you to take a test. If you pass this test, you can clip out of the first year of culinary school.
Wow.
And so there was some people from Johnston Wells. I took the test, and so rather than having 4 years of law school, I had a year and a half of culinary school, and I was like, this sounds like a pretty good trade-off to me.
Sure.
I mean, I always just thought, like Eugene would say, why don't you want to be a chef? I said, this is easy. He's like, yeah, exactly. This is why you should do it, because it's not easy for everyone. This is just the way your mind works.
You're wired. So you went to Johnston Wells. That's in Rhode Island. Right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so did you? I like to ask people, did you learn things there? I learned calculus in college, but I don't ever use it. I mean, I'm sure you learned practical skills in culinary school that you brought into your restaurant life and helped you be successful quicker.
Yeah, I mean, really one of the biggest things I picked up not necessarily from culinary school, and I tell people all the time, if you want to go to culinary school, go as far away as you can from everybody you know and get involved in food. And I mean, I worked at all kinds of different restaurants. And
up that way, yeah.
And when I was up there, it was the first time. I mean, we're a landlocked state.
Sure.
We don't have a lot of fresh seafood. So I'd just go from place to place, learn as much as I could about fresh seafood, because the restaurant I worked at for a long time up there, every morning when I came in, you could see the guys checking our lobster pots out in the bay.
Oh, wow.
And
so
you're not going to get that in Calico Rock, Arkansas. I love it, but it's just different.
Well, yeah, and and again, one of the themes of these is everywhere you stop along the way, you learn something from somebody. And
that really got me to appreciate our farmers here. While they were doing something totally different, the appreciation I got and that was really probably right about the time the farm to table movement was really kind of starting. And it made me think back. Of course, part of going away to Rhode Island and leaving Arkansas behind, you miss what's here.
Sure.
And I grew up as a Baptist minister's kid, so on Sundays we were almost always at some grandma's house having great food.
Yeah.
And I went up there and really kind of got to miss that and started missing my southern roots.
Sure, your produce and all the things here. Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's ensalada de cannoli is great.
Yeah.
but I also missed a good fried chicken made in
Sure.
a cast iron skillet.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody had gardens, and that's really, really neat. So again, you got out of school, I guess in the early 2000s, and then we've talked about it. So you went back to Jonesboro to work, or
First I actually made a small stop in New Jersey and worked for a very short amount of time while I was trying to figure out the next move. And my first wife got pregnant, and she was like, "I am not having this baby anywhere but Arkansas."
Yeah.
So real quickly, we had to come up with a way to get back to Arkansas. So I came to work for Aramark and moved here, and I went to work at John Brown University.
solid.
And was there for a couple of years, and wanted to get in. Again, like I was saying earlier, I wanted to get to Little Rock, and so I went from Siloam Springs to Jonesboro. From Jonesboro, because it was a little bit bigger than Siloam Springs, obviously.
And you had connections there.
Yeah, and I knew people. And so I went from Jonesboro, that was to get to here.
And then to Ada Lots, and then to Simply the Best. And now here we are at good old Benny Keith. Cool. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate your time today, Shane, because I love what you do here, and I love what you got going on at Benny Keith and all that you all do for your customers and the nonprofits. So congratulations on a great career progression and continued good luck here at Benny Keith. And thanks to all of you all who are listening to Heaping Spoonful today. We do our best to get episodes up twice a month, generally on first and third Tuesday of each month. So check out some of the ones you may have missed. Keep an eye and ear out for new ones. Goodbye, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods, Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.